tell her, you can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Long Legs. You know me, Daddy T. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where I have comedians and artists, filmmakers. I've expanded the reach now that I have the luxury of Zoom ahead of me, where I get artists to confess something they want to get off their chest. I'm really excited for my guest today. We met pre-pandemic, when maybe like the highest I've been at pre-pandemic. Like it was like things were going so well, I'm so excited, and then boom, shut down. At Tribeca with my short film, I Think She Likes You. They do a review site, very, very, very great reviews. I feel like stronger than some of the the Hollywood Reporter, Variety. I always tell people to go read the reviews, and we just really hit it off. And you can check out the reviews at Rendy Reviews. And yeah, it's Rendy Jones. What's up? I don't know why I always my intros are always so awkward, but it's become a thing now, and I've embraced it. But how are you, Rendy?
No, that was perfect. I don't know how to. The worst thing about being an independent film critic is that you have to sell yourself all the time, and self-deprecation is my number one attribute. So I'm there is no way I could sell my stuff and my reviews. But over time, I become more confident because I just see the mediocrity of white people and there who are always writing at Variety and Hollywood Reporter and stuff, and it's really old white men, and it's just oh no, and then I feel my self-esteem has just got so much higher. Wow, I'm so much better than this.
Well, the other thing, because I remember I always say it's the other day, but I feel like it's been weeks now, but I tagged you in this because I was I get so sick of, I'm on the other end of things, obviously, I don't review things, but I like to read about them, and I get so sick of, award season and all this sort of, obviously, paid for publication campaigns, or even the ones that aren't, overtly paid for, but they're, you watch a thing and then you read the thing and you're there's either this person didn't watch it or they're just going off talking points. So I was everyone should check out Rendy's reviews because it's that character is good. You add, I was just reading your Godzilla versus Kong review, by the way, but I like that you add you, because that's the whole point, right? We want to get to know, as an audience, how a person thinks about it, not just what did the publicist pay us to say? So I really appreciate that. That you do that. But before we get into it, I like to ask for a good confession, just as a way to start on a positive note. So Rendy, is there something good you want to confess? I'm laughing only because I just recently caught up with you offline about you had a shitty week. So I apologize for that. Hopefully there was something good in it that...
I got sleep. I got so much good sleep.
Oh,
I've never napped so many times in my life without having to wake up to go to classes or do anything else. Just oh, well, I'm up for the day, or I'm up for the night. I'm good.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I like that positivity. You do look great, which is for having had such an awful time. It's funny with comedy because I feel like I got so used to just being we all have shit going on, and then we just assume we automatically go to the positive. But then I always feel like I know you are not in comedy, but you're a very funny person. But then sometimes I'll have to check myself.
I'm in comedy.
Well, you're in. Yeah, but you know what I mean.
I haven't done stand up in a long ass time. But I was making the rounds.
I didn't know that.
Career
you were a comedian. Oh my gosh, or are? That makes sense because I was just gonna say your Twitter is so funny that I'm but what I was about to say was sometimes I check myself in that if I'm not talking to stand-ups, I'm I don't want it to come off I'm just roasting. You know that feeling, but now it makes sense that when you say you do comedy, because I was you're a very funny person. So,
oh, thank you.
I had no idea. Okay, that's cool. So you performed before. So is that how you got into reviewing? How did you make that transition?
Actually, it was the other opposite way around, where I was pretty much I was doing reviews since I was 13, just
wow,
being that
brag. Okay, wonderkind.
I saw an Onion tweet yesterday saying fucking loser sits alone at a theater by themselves. I'm story of my life. That's actually how I got into this.
Oh
I
my
just
god.
been going to movies all the time. I started a blog because I was like, I love movies,
Oh,
and then
that's
I
so
just
cute.
just kept going at it, and then like picked up some different things, started going to like advanced screenings, um which is like all throughout high school. So it's like every day
Whoa.
after school I had to wait on a long ass line in whatever theater in Manhattan just to watch and review the latest thing and put it up on my little blog. And then it wasn't until like 2016, um where every other like 3 months or so, the website that I used to have prior to the website I have now,
Uh-huh.
would like automatically delete whatever work I had up.
Oh
And then I just got so pissed to a point where I said, "All right, fine, I'll use my money to buy a domain."
no.
So like the first, I want to say 2.5 years of like Rendy reviews, as far as like 2012 to 2014 movies goes, completely gone.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, so I'm about to like do a huge expansion announcement sometime soon, but I want to make sure like everything is stabilized as far as like my life goes first before I can
Yeah.
like make any big leaps forward with the website. But
That's so cool. Well,
uh,
I remember when we met at Tribeca, like, cause you were, I mean, it's cool to hear backwards your story of like how you independently did it because like I was also just like, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed there, like, whoa, like here we go. And I remember meeting you and you were so professional and you introduced yourself and I was like, oh, you're so cool, like blah, blah, blah. And it's cool, like having gotten to know you online since to be like, oh, wow, you really like made your own like career here, which is awesome. But I mean, not that you should be able to tell, but meeting you, I was like, oh, like a film critic, so cool. Like, so you you definitely know how to sell it, so that's good.
oh, thanks. I mean, it really wasn't until like 2018 where I like got approved under Rotten Tomatoes because it started with Brie Larson having like um yeah, I forgot what award show she was at.
Uh-huh.
She was saying like we need more diversity in film criticism because there's so many white men in the pool. And then the industry will like just said, "Shit, we need diversity because Captain Marvel said so." So like around like
Classic
August,
Hollywood.
right?
It's
So
like
like
they go, what happened to the diver? It's like everyone pretends they have no idea, and because it's like, what was that year that they did Oscar So White, and then
it was
they
like
just
2015, and I
yeah,
hated that entire
it was
campaign
so
because it was
bad.
like,
And then they had the like little Asian kids come out and do the accounting. Like the whole thing was like you could tell like sometimes Hollywood will do the thing where they'll at least put out like aesthetically diverse people on stage, but you can tell behind the scenes it's like the same people because they literally will just like trot out like these Asian kids to be like, look at, we care about diversity. But then you're like, who approved this concept? Like,
I can never
like
forget
what the fuck is
like
this?
them hiring Chris Rock and then having him go Compton and be like, "Do you know any of these Oscar nominated stuffs this year?" And because it's like, yeah,
Oh god.
it's a black community throwing Chris Rock into a black community. They're gonna
Yeah,
say
let's throw an
the black
A-list billionaire into it's yeah. It's really the mindset is wrong because I feel like they just try to check boxes as opposed to actually trying to curate like actual diverse points of view in the movies and even this year like looking at the SAG nominations, I was like there were so many at first that I was watching. I was like, okay, there's a great options to choose from, and then looking at the final, it's like, okay, like these are still there's like diverse things in this Hollywood sense. It's like, oh, these
yeah.
stories will speak well to white audiences, but they feature black actors, and you're like, I'd also like to just see more filmmakers and writers just telling different stories. But
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's because seeing how like Andra Day won the Golden Globe, I I just couldn't stop laughing because that like the United States versus Billie Holiday it is up there on like one of the worst things I've seen
oh
this
yeah, your
year.
tweets about that were, I think that's what prompted me to say like, oh, go follow Rendy because the difference in like people I know commenting on it and then like publications commenting on it was just so different that I was like, it's
Yeah,
like the Green Book. Well, it's not as bad. Actually didn't watch United States versus Holiday or Green Book, but I imagine the backlash wasn't as bad as Green Book, but that is
no,
kind of the
not
vibe.
even close.
Like that's the vibe of like when you read like publications versus like hearing from people what they thought of things,
Yeah.
and you're like, what's happening here?
I mean, because it's just like it was this year where everybody finally came as a consensus that said, "Oh, the Golden Globes are sacks of shit." Like like there's no black people on the board. They're swindled by not swindled, but they're like they get paid to go on trips by studios, and because of that, they nominate their movies. Like they get pampered, and even I get pampered by like different studios too because I'm part of the Critics' Choice, and
Yeah.
we're so like highly esteemed in the industry.
That's
So
awesome.
I know about that back scratching, but I still like stick to my guns.
Yeah,
I'm like,
that's what makes you a good film critic. Like the pampering is like, yeah, sure. That's what publicists do, right? That's a whole extra industry and field where they throw a lot of money at marketing. It's like, I get it. Yeah, pamper away, but don't pamper and feel like you're owed anything. Like it's like that's
yeah,
in your
exactly.
budget. Whether your film's good or bad, like you gotta pamper, like pamper the critics. But so that way you have the time and you pay attention to the movies. But at the end of the day, you still think what you think about them.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Like I still have like a Marriage Story blanket that's at home made by Netflix.
Oh my
I
god,
used to- I'm
Netflix.
linked into it every single day because it's just like it's so comfy.
It's funny. I actually really did like the American when I first watched it because it was like a perfect. Sometimes you watch a movie at the right time, and I think this is where Netflix does get it right. Is that they do a lot of marketing on the award side, but to people, it's just like it's just there. Like every movie, good or bad, is just on the site, so you can find it on your own. And for me, it was like I was in the right mood to watch it alone at home, sad over a breakup. And it just and it's well written, whatever. It's still very like okay, blah blah blah, jerk off, like rich white people going through suffering. But for what it was, I was like, I really enjoyed it at that moment. But it's funny when Netflix just like totally will push out something super bad and it's like I don't trust any of their marketing. I have to just watch it myself because there's so many things they
Yeah.
put out there, and I'm like, what? How did this get made?
I mean, I'll tell you this today. I guess this would be my confession.
Okay.
Mank, like the David Fincher movie, Mank has been like has been
Oh
like
yeah, I haven't watched that. I have no
I
interest.
haven't watched it either. We Critics' Choice nominated it for Best Picture, and I literally told Netflix, I'm not gonna watch this. I'm sorry, I don't. You're asking a Gen Z black person to give a shit about 1940s Hollywood, white Hollywood. I don't care. Oh, is this about the writer who wrote Citizen Kane? Okay, cool. I guess.
It's like Inception, like of I don't care. Well, obviously Citizen Kane historically is iconic, but it's like I don't. Why do we keep bringing back old Hollywood to prove that Hollywood
exactly.
once was good instead of just like doing it again? Yeah. Well, okay.
It's
I
just
am.
so esteemed.
I really am curious. So this podcast is sort of loosely. I started it loosely inspired by me going to therapy because I went so late in life, and I found like it was really comforting to be able to talk about stuff. But I want to unpack you saying like when you were 13 going to movies by yourself, because to me that like is something that I didn't do that specifically, but I think for me like dance and watching music videos and like learning the dances was like my equivalent of that, of like sort of like finding my way to express myself while being kind of like a little bit feeling like different or outcast at the time. So I'm curious as to like the I guess when now you're doing this as a career, but it sounds like it started off as a sort of like passion. Do you have like I guess like emotional like coping mechanisms now as an adult, or is it still sort of, are you able to be like, this is my job and I still like am passionate for it? Like when you're having a bad day, do you still go to movies, or do you have like confidants you talk to? Like what's your sort of, I guess, like process for handling that sort of thing?
Okay. If we're gonna get that deep into it, I might as
Or
well,
I mean, like as much as you want to share, but for me, like I feel like that's sort of what drew me to the arts. But then I also find that there is a complication as you start doing it, for a career, that you have to kind of compartmentalize some parts of, I'll still dance around at home by myself, but I'm not like when I sit down to write comedy, I'm not just trying to get it out anymore. There's a bit of like structure to it that feels different, which I appreciate, but it's a little different than when I was, younger and since you said you started so young reviewing movies, I'm curious if like that's changed for you, or if you've kind of like have sort of like compartmentalized those processes.
Sorry, I was getting like food.
Oh no, it's all good.
Yeah, no. So like Rendy reviews kind of like it started when I was like because I was just at first I was just super passionate with it because because I just loved movies and stuff and wanted to just like write about them and everything. But like the longer it went on, the more I realized movies became my escapism. Because whenever I would just have a bad day, I'm like, wow, this sucks. Let me go to a theater. You know, we watch like see something new or have like a movie day where I just like hop around before reserved seating.
Wait, did you grow up in New York?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
So,
that definitely sounds like a very cool thing to do. And I'm like, that sounds like a New York kid thing to do. Like,
yeah.
so I'm like, I would have to like get on a bus in the suburbs, but like not like, I guess there's public transportation in the city, but it wasn't nice in the suburbs were like, it might come in an hour and a half and then you don't really know the route and it's pre-internet days. You are younger than me though, so I think maybe that doesn't track as much. You're like, I would just Google it. I'm like, oh yes, that's right. We didn't have that.
I mean, for me, it was just like, all right, it's like one train. Like the younger I was, the less movie theaters I was able to go to on my own. So like, it wasn't even until I was 14 I was able to like go to the movie theaters on my own. Like the first time I did, I had to like lie about it. And I got grounded for it. But like next time I did, it's just like one train station away. But it wasn't until like I went to high school and like my horizons expanded more because I was in high school. I was in this high school called Academy for Careers in Television and Film. So because like my career passion is screenwriting and directing, but but when I was just like not in school, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna write reviews on a little stupid little blog, and then people actually started paying attention to that, and I just kept going at it because it was so exhilarating watching a new movie before it came out or a little while after, and then also in high school, it's just I was completely socially awkward. I didn't know how to interact with other people. It was a not, I don't want to say predominantly white neighborhood because it was a sort of diverse high school, but the racism was really, high because everybody's an asshole in high school. So like racism and sexism and even homophobia was just like it was so at a high level that, just for being yourself, being yourself is just like, it's such a sacrifice. And for me, having to grow, like I grew up in Brooklyn, went to like Brooklyn middle schools where I didn't fit in because I didn't have like that kind of the materialistic outlook with that my peers had, or the same level, or not same level, but like I wasn't into the kind of music that they listened to. Because it's like, I don't want to say stereotypically black neighborhood, but it was a not so good neighborhood that I went to school at. And then when it came to high school, it's just like, all right, I get to finally, be myself. But then because I'm black, a lot of the other non-black kids kind of had like this lowered expectation of me that I never fulfilled to their views. So it was just like me being put in a box.
Yeah, that sounds frustrating.
Throughout two different like all throughout my childhood and not adulthood, but like adolescence as well.
It's interesting, like that. I mean, that does sound super frustrating. It's interesting how cause you like were aware of like how you didn't want to fit in just to fit in, like, because I mean, I think that the idea of like sort of needing to fit into like a certain like high school culture, like where it might be different from high school to high school, but that's like a common thing. But a lot of people, I feel like myself included, I definitely fell into peer pressure a bit of like, oh, I need to like dress this way or do this, and like kind of hid parts of myself, which later I was like, oh no, I like want it, I'm gonna be the weird quirky person that I am. But I feel like that speaks a lot to your character, as to like you recognize that like, oh, this mainstream high school like coolness isn't how I feel, but instead of just like hiding who I am, I'm going to go do me over here, like watch movies and do this. And it's probably still a very frustrating experience, but I think it's really cool that you were able to just be like, yeah, but I'm still gonna be me. Like, as annoying as this will feel for a bit, like I'd rather be me.
Yeah. Definitely that. And it wasn't even until like long after I graduated where I realized, oh my, like the thing that I do right now with like going to movies and then getting to go to like meeting different the people that I have in my life right now, I met that are dear to me. I met through screening lines, like just like waiting for movies
Oh, cool.
and stuff like that. And the people and a lot of them are still prominent in my life today. Um, so I found it to be a bit like ironic where the people who I grew up around
Uh-huh.
aren't really in my life
Hmm.
anymore. Like the majority, after I graduated high school and everything, the majority of people I cut off or was just it was exponential.
You
So
you
many
grew
different
you
people.
grew out. Yes, I feel like sometimes people come. It's not that they were never important, but like as you continue evolving and growing and learning, like you're going to move into new groups and with people who vibe with you more. So, cause sometimes I think about that too. I'm like, oh man, did I like, actively like abandon my childhood friends? And it's like, no, we just like went different ways. And I'm sure they have their new people too that they get to, vibe with more than I do. But yeah, that I think that as long as you're like finding you're obviously finding new friends. Like we met in later in your life, and so I think
Yeah.
that's a cool thing. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna get your confession. And we're back. Rendy, the time has come. Is there anything you would like to tell me?
Uh, it's crazy because like I'm trying to like think about like like anything like
Yeah.
big
It
confessional
doesn't have to
that I
be
have.
juicy. I mean, honestly, a lot of the stuff we're talking about already is super interesting. I don't like, because I have a lot more like comedians on. I tell them to I say confession because sometimes they have like these pre-planned stories, but I feel like really it's a conversation as a way to get to know you. So I mean, we can keep talking about how you got into reviews if you want, or anything. I obviously know you from that side of your life, but if there's anything that you feel like is interesting that you want to share or talk about, I'm happy to go down that road too.
Oh, so literally, kind of have this not like I don't even know if there's like a complex,
Mm-hmm.
that it's called, but I have this thing where I could only like relate to people who are creatives as me,
Hmm.
who are like in a very laser focused in their craft in their career and such. So my transition into like comedy came from like going to like parties
Uh-huh.
that I got for friends, and then once I went to like one comedy show in New
Uh-huh.
York, in like a backyard.
Oh,
I just
cool.
mingled my way around and just like wanted to be friends with all the comedy people because they knew exactly what they were doing. They had their sets prepared, and I was just like analyzing and observing. And then I came to realize, oh, all these people are older than me, and now I have every like person who I connect with is older than me. It's in some capacity. I can't relate to other people my age because they're in like they're in this they're this like not mindset, but
Hmm.
this place in life where they don't know exactly what they want to do, or they don't have a clear, a plan,
Yeah.
a focus or a planned future. And even I could admit that I don't at the moment because I'm like about to graduate college in a month, and I'm just like,
Oh,
oh shit,
congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, you're a lot younger than I even thought, but that's awesome. That's a good thing. Like, but I think for me, I like to feel like I'm young, so I assume everyone's my age, and then I realize that like I am probably one of those comedians you're talking about who are older but act young. You know what I mean? Like there is like you're mature for your age because you know you have drive and you know what you want to do, and then also a lot of comedians are very young for their age. Like
Yeah.
not always in a good way. I feel like I've grown a lot, but I definitely have friends who are like don't want to mature, and so that's a fun little intersection of not only they're not all mature, they might just be get late starters. But I know what you mean. Yeah, there's like a sense of like kind of cutting through the bullshit a bit with like that sort of create. Is that what you mean? Or I don't know if I'm getting that correctly, but that's how I feel like around like really like creative people with drives is like there's a sense of like, well, I see the big picture, I see what I want out of it, I see how things could be different, but I also see them as they are, as opposed to just like, well, here we go, let's go to brunch, you know.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly what it is because there's so many different people that I've like met throughout this lifetime thus far where they're just young and like to live in the moment, and I have no idea how the hell to do that at all.
In a way, that's really poignant that you have made a career out of watching movies, because like it is both being in the moment, like it's like you said, escapism to just be there in a theater, but also it's completely not in the moment because you're literally watching someone else's vision. So you're kind of time traveling, like you're here grounded in your in your body in this theater for 2 hours, but also you're just completely in a director's vision.
Yeah, that's really really way to perspective. But as far as like trying to like live and trying to connect with other people around my age, it was just so difficult because everybody has like their own interests and their own areas and stuff, and it's hard if they're not like as creative. No, I don't want to say as creative as I am, but like creative in their own sense, so I can understand, their perspective and try to get on, their like level of expertise and stuff, and try to learn from them. But as far as like college experience thus far, I can say I've been through my quarter life crisis already, and it's like, and even like the pandemic has like, I thought that would have been my quarter life crisis, but my quarter life crisis was me trying to join a fraternity because I was just so I was so obsessed of like not having the closure of like fitting in. To in some regard, and not having to, and just not being in like this perception of being man, or being being yourself, or trying to find like identity, because I grew up so solely around women and everything that like I and didn't really have a good prominent male figure outside of my dad. So I was just like, okay, I need some type of brothers or to help shape me to be, so I could be better than who I am now. But then that was just such a messy timeline for me that I hated.
Did you join?
I hated.
Did you end up joining and quitting, or you didn't go through with rushing?
I what's after like the point where you've been scouted? Was it pledging, or is it rushing first, or is it pledging?
Yeah,
first?
I think it's funny that I was gonna share this part too, but I was also in a sorority and I quit. But I went to NYU, so I was like very like not a serious thing there, but in a similar way of like constantly feeling like outsider, but then also being like, well, here's a way that I can immediately like feel like I belong. But then, turns out you still have to be yourself in it. And I'm like, meh. Some of my good friends I still have from that, but ultimately I realized like that this isn't the thing that will solve my problems. But it's rushing when you're trying to join, and then when they pick you, like a specific one picks you, then you're pledging.
Okay, I didn't follow through with pledging.
Probably for the best. I ended up quitting after I was initiated anyways.
That's awesome. It's like, well, I'm already here. Fuck it. I don't want to be here anymore.
It's funny because that literally is how I didn't get, like, I grew up in the Bay, and a big emphasis in the Bay Area is like just like name brand schools, like Ivy Leagues, and I never got into an Ivy League, but I remember like really wanting to get into Stanford because I was from Palo Alto, and it was sort of like a cool thing to get in, which is almost, if you think about it, the nerdiest thing to say, to be like the popular kids get into Stanford. But I remember just like vividly being like, there's no way I'm gonna go because I want to move to New York, but I wanted so bad to get in and reject them. So I think a part of me always like felt like, I hope that I've gotten over it. I can't honestly say that I've gotten over the need for that sort of validation, but I think I've gotten better at it. But I definitely had that when I was younger, is that feeling of like wanting to prove that I could belong, but it was like my choice to not pick that path. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I didn't want to go there, and I didn't want that life, but I wanted people to know that I could. But I obviously I couldn't because I didn't get it. So joke was on me.
So you had to like just use that energy for something else. I'm like, so already you're gonna be my Stanford release.
I know, it's so funny when I think about it, because I'm like, I am the thing that I'm making fun of, because like why did I want to get it and then I couldn't? So it's like, yeah, why not just, you didn't even want it. Like, why not just not do it? But what made you end up, so you just like on a whim were like, I want to join a frat, or did you have other friends at the time who were like really into it?
No, I was completely alone. I was like, because that's the thing about, like, for me, a lot of my college experience was just me just on campus, and then it was wake up, go to school, go to movie right after. And that's been like the entire routine since high school and everything. But with college, it's just, you're on your own, you get your classes, you do your shit, and then you just get out of campus. You know, there was no kind of like close net unless you were in like the film branch. And even then, you're really selective with the people that you end up being friends with. And I'm happy to say that I have like 3 amazing like friends who are close to me. Like there's some who like moved away, and some who are still around. I haven't seen in so long, but there's only like 3 college friends that I made thus far, and even like, well, yeah, okay, I could say they're new because like because I have like other people from high school who ended up going to my college.
Gotcha.
And so it's just like, all right, I grew up with you, might as well still stick to you in some capacity.
Yeah.
Well, so like I have like a homegirl from who I've known for like 9 years now.
Oh wow.
Who's like been like one of my best friends ever since. And so if I just need to vent about anything, I just call her up and just like and she just picks up the phone, and I just just go off on anything, and she can understand it because we've known each other for that long and then some.
That's the best. Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because I think that you do end up keeping in touch with less of your like sort of early childhood friends, but the ones that you do, you tend to have those stronger bonds. Because I was like in a lot of activities growing up too. Like I was in dance and choir, all this stuff. And you know, when you're in it and you're constantly going to the shows and the practices, you feel like you have this like never ending group of friends, because it's just like these huge mega groups. But then now I'm like, I mostly don't talk to most of them, but there's like a few from each, and those friends are still very strong. So I think that is what it ends up being. It's like, it'd be impossible to like keep 200 friends close from childhood, but you do have a couple like close friends that you've known for decades, which is really nice.
Because I mean, for me, I have like this weird like loyalty kind of thing where, you know, if you're gonna be my friend, I'm gonna stick to you like glue and just like root for you. Like I would root for you in the same way I hope you would root for me. You know, with all you know, with each other, celebrate each other's achievements and such. So, but as like when I was just growing up and just realizing that people that you were like close to once would just drop you on a whim, and then because I'm a Pisces, I just never get over it. I just
water
end up
signs. I'm a Scorpio.
Like,
so.
emotionally just unstable, not knowing what the hell to do. And sometimes it's just like hard letting that person go, even when like they've obviously like dropped you and like have
Uh-huh.
nothing to do with you. Nothing was more terrifying than like one of my ex like close friends that I knew around high school. She didn't go to my high school or anything, but we were tight. She was my prom date and everything, and then like I think it was the summer after, just she just dropped me and everything,
Oh man.
and it wasn't until like I was taking a women and gender studies course all about I forgot what the topic was. I think oh yeah, it was about sexuality and gender. It was a gender and sexuality course at my college because I just came out as non-binary at the time, and I was like, all right, let me see if I can understand more about the history and gender politics and stuff.
Mm.
So I know what the hell I'm talking about if I'm ever gonna be in a discussion. And
Mm-hmm.
then next thing you know, I see her in the same
In the
class,
same class.
and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, universe, you didn't
You.
prepare me for this. Is this some sort of test? Are you testing me to, to
Uh-huh.
get to get back with my close friends and be like, hey, I guess you're something and I'm non-binary.
The
Um,
universe does do that sometimes. They're not always tests, but they're almost like little like I like to think. I mean, I'm also a water sign, so I love signs, but I love to think of it more as like you know the holiday doors and Nightmare Before Christmas where there's just like a bunch, but we
yes,
only go through the Christmas one. It's like or Halloween, I guess. But I like to think of it as like the universe will like dangle little. It's almost like a video game where it's like, do you press this button? It's like, oh, here's someone from your life, like that you've moved on and become a different person. Do you want to re-enter this game? And you're like,
yeah.
no. Or you can be like, well, I'll be me now with my new, my new understanding of life. And if they vibe with me, then sure. But I'm not going to go back just to play that game again or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes because I have to learn the hard way that all right, when people drop you, that's because it's a different power that doesn't have to do with you specifically, even if you think it does. It's more about their faults
Yeah.
and their flaws and their terrible perceptions of things.
Yeah.
Uh, it wasn't until like I
Yeah.
had to. I was part of, not part, but it was just such a crazy film criticism debacle last year with like this racist person who was
Mm.
who like targeted me because we were like, because I used to, well, not because I used to do it. I used to hang out with like that person and another group of people around like the Tribeca that we met.
Uh,
I was hanging around like four different people, and it was like, yay, this is my new crew. We
uh-huh.
knew each other from Twitter, and since they're all visiting here, I'm gonna be like the Denzel in Training Day. I'm just showing them New York, showing them the ropes. But then it wasn't until like long after where they were just like unfollowing me and blocking
Oh,
me, and
no.
I was just like, okay, we had brunch and everything. I thought we were like becoming friends and
Dang.
stuff, but it was just like, no, they were just racist assholes
Ugh,
who were
I'm
just
sorry.
using you, and I was like, oh, okay, and
Well,
um,
I don't think I met any of them, so I guess it speaks more to you're better at making friends than them.
oh yeah, it's just like so many different things. I have to like rush to learn
Yeah.
about the world and meeting new people because 2019 that was the same as you with the festival spaces. I was just so wide eyed and bushy tailed,
Hmm.
thinking like, all right, well I'm in like this big venue with so many different people of all ages. Let me see if I could, you know, uh, make new colleagues or like older than me or
Hmm.
around my age because I was the baby amongst everybody else. I was I was like 21 and was just like it was just fresh new into the critic world, and I was like, all right, let me make a lot of critic friends. I follow all these people. Let's see if I can
Yeah.
like become part of their better judgment of some case.
Well, you know what's interesting is like, I mean, I don't want to call myself old, but I I am old. But I also, I feel like when I was starting out, like interning and doing things like that, I remember feeling like, oh, I wanted to like quickly grow up. And now whenever, like if I meet a 21-year-old at an event, like I'm immediately impressed. Like I'm like, you want to be here. Like you're already like it's one of those weird like paradoxes where like, of course you're always going to want to be like further than you are. Like even I have that now, but I think there's something really cool about just knowing exactly what you want. Like you said, having that drive and vision so young, because a lot of people, myself included, like took a while to get to the thing. And then when we're there, we're like, God, I wish I knew I wanted to do this earlier. And it's like a really cool thing that you have that. So, but I can understand why you don't necessarily want to waste your time with people who are like not in that space, because you've been through it and you figured it out. And it's like, they're on their own journey, but of course you want to be around people who know what they want.
Yeah.
Do you find that people come up to you, like now that you've been doing it a little longer, like where, like, you know, when you were starting out, you were like going to, you know, older, what is it, seniors or whatever for mentorship. Do you find that you have people coming, like younglings coming to you for advice and like looking up to you like that?
Yeah. I still don't know how to like respond whenever it happens. To like somebody comes up to me and like say like, "Oh my gosh, you're Rendy, or you're Rendy reviews," and I'm like, "Yes," and I don't know if like because I am socially awkward at heart, so I don't whenever somebody's like, "Oh, I read your reviews, I love your reviews," and my only response is I'm sorry. I mean, I learned how to like channel that self-deprecation on and off. It's just you have to catch me on a good day.
How did it feel like the first time, or like, I mean, I imagine you have like a great social media presence, so I'm like, I imagine you do have fans and stuff, but how did it feel like meeting someone in person? Because knowing that you used to be that to other people, like, did you make that connection of like, oh, well, I'm like now the person on the other side?
It depends, because it's like if it is like just some weird, not like weird, but like if it's
Get
like
away from me, you creeps.
if it's like a nerdy white dude or anything, I'm just and they try to like ask me, because a lot of like white guys who are like getting into the business and everything now, who want to be critics now, are like in my DMs asking me like, "Oh, how did you get this far?" Or can you give me your advice or what to do? I'm like,
yeah, there's a fine line between respect and homage, and then people just going like, "Can you just email this person for me and like tell them that I'm great?" And you're like, "Who are you?" Like, yeah, there's a lot of white guys do that. They're like, "I too am like you. I want to do things good, so help me skip the line." And you're like, "That's not how that works." Like,
Exactly. That's exactly what it is, and I just like leave them on red. But if it's just like somebody else of like a minority or anything who has to jump through those hurdles, like I will like willingly like tell them what to do and how to do those things.
yeah, because it should be asking. It's like out of respect for your career, they're like respecting you and being like, oh, I'd love to hear more about your life. But you can always tell. Like, it's funny because I'm like, you and I feel like I know exactly what you mean. But then sometimes when people are like, well, so what, you just won't answer questions? It's like, no, like you can usually tell. Like, it's hard to explain. But really, I think the missing key is respect, because there's a feeling of where like a new open micer will talk to you like they are almost like, how did you do it? Like, well, if you could do it, I can do it. And then it's that tone that they're using. We're like, well, help me cheat like you did, because clearly you don't deserve to be there or whatever. And you're like, what? Excuse me. Like okay. So it's definitely, yeah, I think it's the respect, but it's hard to put into words. But you can tell when you see it, when someone's like, I admire you, I'd love to hear more, versus like, so are you going to just like help me or what?
Yeah. And part of like my hesitance is that it took me so long to actually really fully comprehend that, oh wait, my website is the thing that people are paying me attention, people are giving me attention for, more so than me trying to like become a screenwriter and trying to get noticed as a writer for film, whereas I'm like writing like hundreds of reviews a year and more
Mm.
filmmakers and screenwriters are following me or finding me through that. And it wasn't until like like my first 6 years of Ready reviews was me having to jump through all these different hurdles,
Mm.
of like waiting on lines, or buying movies when they come out, or buying
Mm.
tickets for movies when they come out, sneaking
Oh.
sneaking inside press screenings, sneaking
Oh
into press
man.
screenings,
How did you
sneaking
do that?
into gilded screenings.
Ooh. It's funny because
Um,
there's so many, yeah, in LA, New York as well, but there are so many of those around award times, and they are just like constantly, like so many people will sign up and not go. So it's like they're probably like so happy that you're there and you're excited to watch a movie, but it is annoying how many hurdles they set up because it's like there's this elitism where it's like, half the people who are like getting sent these emails don't even show up. So it's like they should have more people like you who like actually want to be there and actually care and are watching it.
well, I mean, but well, this it's just there's so many different cultures in literally every different facet. So like
Yeah.
New York screening lines was its own culture
Uh-huh. Oh,
of
okay.
itself, where I'm seeing the same like 20 something people every single
Oh,
day
wow.
of my life, and it's just like. And they're like, I don't want to be like, oh, but like, there's so much older people who obviously don't have much to do, and I'm like, and then there comes a point where I'm like, okay, I'm young, I'm not a loser. Meanwhile,
Uh-huh.
but then there came a point where it's like, all right, I can't do this thing anymore because I'm in college now and I don't want to
Mm.
be like having to ask somebody to go with me to a screening so they could stand in line for me,
Mm.
and it's so extensive, and since New York is so big,
Gotcha.
it's so addictive to get into that culture, into the
Gotcha.
screening lines and everything. So by the time 2018 came and I got that Rotten Tomatoes approval,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't until then where I had to go, oh, fuck me. I had my own website. I could have been a press critic all this time in the eyes of other people. And after I sent like that wave of like emails to every single publicist, like
Yeah.
that I could find through a LinkedIn, which was like the only time I ever used LinkedIn in my life. Um, People, studio like publicists are just like, oh yeah, of course, come through. We need more. We need more diverse film critics out there. And even like I had my own independent outlet going on. I was still getting sent emails from like different people, and just like saying, yeah, I love your review, and then
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your kind words, or because there was just a time where I was like, I felt the drive to like, all right, let me see whatever that I can, because my cinema view was just so limited, where it's just
Yeah.
like studio blockbuster stuff, and I'm like, no, I love indie movies, I love all these different things. I'm trying to like get trying out my new taste for film, more so than my taste for anything else in my life. And it wasn't until like I went to my first Sundance where I realized, okay, I feel like I have another few years of this ahead of me before I really want to like retire and move on to my
Mm.
life, because come like next year it's gonna be a fucking decade that I've
Wow.
done Ready reviews, and I'm just like, okay, I want to see where I could do what I could do with this website, with this brand, without having to deal with college at all, or any type of schooling
Uh-huh.
at all. So like after I graduate next month, I'm trying to like create an expanded the horizons for Ready reviews, and the future of it, because journalism, the field of journalism is such an annoying ass hassle.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to be non-white and
Mm.
and get your voice out there, having to jump through the hurdles of like getting access to a screener, because I'm not a freelancer anymore,
Mm.
and I just like stuck to Ready reviews and everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different freelancers who have to find an outlet that will
Mm.
take their pitches, that will
Right.
pay for them to get payment for it. And then even if they have to do like interviews, get access to that talent's publicist
Huh.
to give them access to that interview. And then you know,
You have
and
all
just
these skills now in an interesting way because you like understand the grand picture of like how the, you know, the big publications do it, and you also have your own website, so you kind of like there's like a, almost like a what's the word, like not advantage to like you had to do that because at first it was like, oh, you had to do your own, but then you realize like, oh, now you're your own boss, and you've created this brand that's like you actually have a voice that people will go to Rendy for instead of just like, what did the variety say? So like,
yeah.
I think that's really cool. I'm curious because you mentioned also directing and writing. So is that something that you're thinking of like, or you're still doing on top of this, or has this sort of transitioned into like, let's see where this goes? Because to me, I like as a writer, I don't separate that, but I know the industry sometimes does. But to me, I'm like, you're obviously good at writing, you have taste, and like all filmmakers go watch other people's things and have thoughts too. So it's like, yeah, it's the same thing. Like, you know, like you can tell a story but I think that there's this weird divide in the industry. So I'm curious if that's something like you've actively like thought about like, oh, I want to transition, or you're just kind of like going with the flow to see where it goes.
I'm more going with the flow as of now, because I was so laser focused into trying to do screenwriting and go into school for it and trying to learn all these different things. While I was like getting that education, I was realizing, wait, just like everything that I've done with Ready reviews, I taught myself how to do on my very own. So I don't like all these different requirements being set up for me is like kind of not, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it's not adding much to my knowledge right now.
You learn way more from, I mean, honestly, you learn a lot about writing from reviewing things. Like so much more. Like I don't do reviews so much, but I used to love to watch like live, like because when I was at NYU, they like give away tickets for like Broadway shows, or like, I guess there are perks of going to school in the city, but I used to go to those. And then I think just because I had that itch to write, but I wasn't writing my own, you know, narrative stuff yet, I would just like blog on my own, like Blogspot or whatever, about how I felt about it. But what I realized was just like parsing through those thoughts of like experiencing someone else's vision and trying to interpret it and then process it, like helped me now when I'm like writing comedy or doing things, like, because I remember how it felt to sit in the audience and like process either being like, oh, I can see what you tried to do, but you missed your mark, or like, oh, that really spoke to me and here's why it worked. Like I think about that way more now, even though I didn't think that those skills were connected. So I feel like you are honing in on your like storytelling because you're literally watching way more stories than most filmmakers do, you know?
Yeah. And just like being able to break down your thoughts and like and analyzing like, you know, the shortcomings and strengths of each project. I just, whenever I go back into like my final draft, I'm like picking up different pieces that's with like the stories I write or try to write and go, okay, this is how I can make this better. This is how I could make this character stand out more. Yeah. This is how like and just like understanding characters more through life experience. Yeah. More and also, you know, watching things being presented to me on screen because now there's just this weird moment in Hollywood where every third story being told emphasizes more on identity, but it keeps ham-fisting like, this is why it's important, and this is why it matters. This is what it means to be this box right now, and now I'm just like, all right, I'm exhausted by that. Can we just let these characters be characters and not having to regurgitate this cycle? And then because I'm watching so many different things that's just exhausting me, I get more excited about the stuff that I'm writing because I'm trying my best to break those barriers and show, all right, this is the stories I want to write. This is the shit that I know I could tell stories about without having to emphasize like, this is a black boy and this is a story about him being black. It's
so like, no. True, but that's like the wildest thing, because the whole push, like kind of what we were talking about before, but the push towards that diversity sometimes is almost like putting a lid on it in a way, because they're like, oh, we do need more diverse stories, but like diverse points of view. And obviously we're so white right now in Hollywood. That's like, yes, it means like less white people, but it doesn't mean because you're not white you get to tell a story. Like, it's just the story has to be like different, and it's like the idea of having diversity is to realize that people aren't their race. But yeah, Hollywood keeps doing that thing where they're like, and yeah, like you said, like, here's the black story. It's like, but you're just doing the thing where you're saying everyone's the same. It's like, it's so wild to me when that happens, because at the same time, like, they're doing a lot with like Asian stories lately, because I think after Crazy Rich Asians, which at the same time I'm like, I want to support all of this, like I want to support representation, but it's so hard when all they do is push it out to be like, here's your Asian movie, why didn't you watch it? If it didn't do well, that's your fault. And you're like, well, maybe I didn't think it was good. Like, there was that Paper Tiger one that I watched that was so bad, and I was like, I don't know if it was called Paper Tiger. I think it was Alan Yang. And I like the people who made it, but I was like, this is a bad movie. And I also felt bad saying that, because it's like, I know that you guys really want this to do well so that it'll set the stage for me getting jobs, but it's not a good movie, and that's fine, right? Like, I think
it's hard. It's so hard to like admit it, because you're just like, because there was just like a weird like tangent where I was thinking, all right, here are these black movies that are made by the black people, but I really don't like these movies, and then when I'm like having to be thrown into those spaces where I'm like around all these people who made these black movies, I'm like, shit, I don't want to be like, all right, I gave your movie a 2-star rating. Hi.
But I think that's what makes you a good critic. So I feel like that you're just ahead of your time, and I feel like that's a good thing, because it's like you understand that true diversity isn't just giving a good review because it's diverse, right? Because that's not a thing. The word diverse, I mean, whatever, don't get me started. I hate that word because it's like implying diversity from something normal, and you're like, who came up with this word? Like, white people. But because it's like, what do you mean diverse from what? But I think the point is that there should be good and bad movies from all different points of view, because that is true diversity, just like there's so many shitty white movies. So we shouldn't be mad if there's a bad Asian movie. But that, I am very curious, because you watch so many things, do you enjoy, like, now that you know, like, the end game is to give your thoughts, like, do you enjoy watching like bad movies, or like are you like I don't know if this makes sense, but like, okay, like, for example, Wonder Woman was just like, did you watch it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay,
of course.
so I'll use that example without spoilers, but whatever. There's nothing to spoil. It spoils itself. But it's so bad that like I almost enjoyed like watching it through the eyes of like kind of like laughing at it. But I'm curious, because you have to watch a lot of things. Like, do you ever feel like things are so bad that it's funny to you, or you're like excited to like kind of give a snarky review, or are you like very much like, this is a waste of my time? Like, how do you sort of approach watching movies differently when you're knowing that you're like going to be, giving your thoughts on it?
I'm gonna be completely honest. It's easier for me to write a bad movie review than it is for me to write about a good, because it's like when flaws are so glaring, and I'm able to like articulate what I feel and my thoughts on it. It makes for an easier review. And also, there's some kind of like fiery drive that motivates me.
It's the shit talking gene. We all have it. Well, I know it's bad, but it's like when everyone in the room is agreeing, it's like kind of fun to be like, let's just shit on this shitty movie.
Yeah, it's fun, but at the same time, when like now I've come to a point where I now have to interact with creative people who made these things, where I've worked on it. So, and then just like, and when they're so articulate with their thought, like their mindset and how they approach their kind of storytelling, I'm just there going, well, shit, now I fucking feel bad.
Interesting. I didn't even think about that. Like the more recognition you get for your site, the more you're gonna actually have because artists are so insecure. The more you're going to have like insecure artists reading your thoughts, and then you know that, and that might affect how you present your thoughts. Or I mean, maybe it doesn't, but I don't. That's so interesting.
No. You're right, because like I'm thinking by the time I end Ready Reviews, I'm gonna have to shut the entire site down, because because I want to work with different directors. I want to work with different different writers and stuff, and I can't, and I don't want to like be like, I gave your movie a bad review, but yeah, I want to work with you, and,
But I
and
think
stuff.
that
I would
true
love
artists will get, because it's you respect them. That's why you didn't give them a bad review because you didn't like them. You watched it earnestly and they did not deliver. And I think that's a true respect. I mean, it's one. I mean, I don't know. There might be some people who aren't really bad reviews. Were like, I don't know what you were thinking, but most of the time you're like, oh man, they really fell short of my expectations or whatever. And I think a true artist would want that truth. Have you gotten art like filmmakers or directors reaching out after reading your stuff?
Yeah, yo, my so, more than I can.
Any
Yeah.
stories that, I mean, you don't have to share anything that's like not, that's off the table, but is there anything fun that, like a fun moment that you want to share?
Crap, because I have way too many stories in my head. That's like, it's hard to like really try to pinpoint
Were there any
pinpoint it out.
surprising ones to you, like someone that you admired for a long time, or that you were like, oh, they're, or like that were surprising to you that they read your review?
Shit, dude.
It's okay.
Okay. No, no. All right. So,
Trade secrets,
so,
okay.
so there was like 2019 when I was just like, you know, just going to different festivals and stuff. I was it was the movie. I went to the premiere of Booksmart,
Oh, okay.
and everything, and like that. Needless to say, that movie kind of like changed my entire like life because it was the perfect movie I needed to see in the moment in my life that I was
Mm,
at,
mm,
where I felt so, because I had to make like the most sacrificial decision uh for myself thus far, where it's like I had to like drop a class in order to further my career,
uh-huh.
and even financially, it was just like, this is a risk right now. I made a GoFundMe to go to South by. People gave me money to go and everything, and I'm just writing reviews on my website and everything, and I'm just like, I'm terrified because I'm thinking like, okay, I should have done this. I needed to be a film student. I needed to get my college education done and everything. I need to focus on my career, um, because I had a shitty professor who gave me like a stupid ultimatum and everything.
Ugh.
And it wasn't until like that night, the premiere of Booksmart, where it's just like, I'm at a premiere for this movie, this huge ass crowd. We're all having the time of our lives watching this, and then there just came to a point where like, unified laughter all at once, and I'm just like, holy shit, no, this is where I belong, dude.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, that talking about further in your career, that's literally like South by Southwest. That's like iconic part of the film industry. So I mean, like
Yeah,
that professor. Well, you know what? They can stick it where the sun don't shine. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sure they have their own life and whatever. I love that so much. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I feel like that's like a really nice place to end on. I want to end with a quick game if you have time, but because we've been talking much about movies and it is award season, before we get into it, like, I'm just like, okay, let's make this real quick because I know people can check it out on your site. But is there like a front runner for you of like movies that you watched this year that you really like? Or alternate, really shitty, skip it, don't watch it. I'm just like, for the most people who listen to podcasts are not watching as many movies as you are, or even me in LA, killing time trying to avoid panic attacks. So from your mouth, like, I mean, this isn't like an official stamp of approval, but anything that you want to share with us, like that people might not have checked out that you recommend?
I guess Shiva Baby came out today.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of like the first really great movie that's come out this year, to be honest,
Ooh,
and
okay.
not necessarily be like, because the entire release date game of like
Mm-hmm.
what movies are counted as 2020, were counted as 2021, has been like so flimsy.
Uh-huh.
I could just like be like, all right, no, no, no. Minari was 2020 because that shit came out virtually in December.
True.
Same with No Man Land because it was virtual in December. So I'm like, okay, these are 2020 movies.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, these are my babies that I want to root for Oscars. This is Oscar season. But as far as 2021 movies go, Shiver Baby came out today.
Ooh,
That's
okay.
the best 2021 movie
The
yet.
latecomers, I feel like. Oh yeah, I guess Academy Awards already announced, but like yeah, there's always those like latecomers or yeah, what a weird industry that we don't have time to get into the dates
I
in the
know,
game,
right?
but okay, I did love Minari and Nomadland, so those are great. Do you have time for a quick game? It's a movie based
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Okay. It's very simple because I know you watch a lot of movies, and I sometimes do like a would you rather version. Would you rather alternate? Would you rather whatever a modified would you rather on this show. This is a would you rather movie edition with just like movie tropes. So it's pretty straightforward. So you just answer however you want. There's no right or wrong. It's just fun. Okay, would you rather find out you have a secret evil twin or find out you've been the killer all along?
Secret evil twin.
Okay.
Because I would assume that like my evil twin is actually a good person.
Whoa. Okay.
It's just like the a complete like
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can go either way in movie tropes. It's either if they're evil, then you win, even though it's scary, or
yeah.
they're actually good and you suck. But either way, there's closure. Would you rather sacrifice yourself to save mankind or sacrifice yourself for the love of your life?
Sacrifice myself for the love of my life.
Ooh,
I'm
very Pisces
I'm romantic
energy
like
there.
that. I'm petty like that.
Okay. I feel like maybe the same because it's like mankind would just all universally be glad they're alive and forget. And then, but the love of your life, there's one person who remembers.
Yeah, exactly. My legacy will live on through them, but mankind just sucks. It's just gonna keep sucking.
That's so funny. Would you rather get superpowers from a government experiment or inherit a zoo?
Government experiment.
Okay.
Yeah,
What kind of superpowers would you have?
flight.
Ooh, yeah,
I think it's
that's
just.
pretty good.
I just want to like be around in the clouds. Like, oh no, this sucks today in New York. Let me just fly out to,
Oh, that
to
sounds
Texas.
nice. Yeah, that'd be really fun. Would you rather flash back to a teenager and relive high school or flash forward to the end of your life and you've accomplished everything you set out to do, but you have to like skip your life?
Damn, that's hard. Damn, I would say high school because I would be so cooler than I am. Like I would know how to like inherit all my my ego.
Yeah, I think I would do the same. Yeah, because there's always like it's always a fantasy to go back to high school. Weird though now that when I think about it, I'm like time isn't truly real. Like if you are you, no matter where you go, it doesn't really matter. But I would also pick high school. But it truly wouldn't matter. But I would pick high school.
Yeah.
Okay, final one. Would you rather steal the Mona Lisa or steal the Declaration of Independence?
Steal the Declaration of Independence. Make my own modifications to it.
True, yeah, that's it. And it, following Nick Cage's footsteps. I honestly can't remember if he did the Constitution or Declaration, and I didn't bother to look it up. So
I've never watched The National Treasure. It was just like growing up. I was like, oh, Nick Cage. I don't care.
Yeah, I get what it's about, and I'm sure that it's fun. And if I ever had to watch it, I would, and it would be exactly what I thought.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know movies past like everything between.
Oh god, you're gonna make me feel so old right now. Okay.
No. Because it's like, no, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, finish. Yes, what you were saying. You were addressing me as grandma. What?
No, it's just like movies between the 2000s and 2010s. I just like did not know shit about. Apart from like the occasional family movie and whatever, but. It wasn't until cinema didn't like become cinema to me until like 2012, where it was just like, oh, I know who these directors are now, oh, I could watch international movies and understand story unconventional types of storytelling and everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's super interesting too. Like because of I never thought about that, like the time period. Because for me, the time before I got into like I guess thinking about directors was like when I just watched movies. Like, Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever, and the first Spider-Man. But then when I think about it, I'm like, you do go back after you start liking movies and watching like quote unquote classics to you, but then to like people who are older than you, that was what they watched growing up. Did you ever go back and watch like I'm going to use quotes, okay, air quotes, classics, because I'm guessing these are movies that came out when I was young. But did you ever go back and like watch classics after you discovered cinema that from that before time that you like really like? Because now this is me out of curiosity of like time periods and how they're viewed. But are there any movies from like, you know, you went back and watched because you started liking directors that were from before that era?
Sometimes, my younger sister could tell you that I don't know shit about the '90s because she actually had like an entire phase where she actually watched every high school '90s movie.
Oh wow!
And even more. Meanwhile, I was just like mad selective, like, all right, I think I'll just watch this, and because I'm like watching new movies all the time. There's always a new movie every single week. I can't. I'm too stifled to even like remotely step foot outside of like the 21st century as far as like movies go.
That's for the best. The 90s and 80s were full of stereotypes that don't hold up at all. I don't really think they held up at the time, but I imagine people were not talking about it as much.
I mean, because like it's just like. Being at school and like watching all these different movies that are considered classics, I'm just like watching them like going, I fucking hate this. I hate this. Like it was like what, Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, okay.
Where
I didn't watch that, but I know that. Yeah, John Travolta.
It's so problematic in every sense. It's outside of the Bee Gees music, it's just so bad.
That's how I feel about 16 Candles, and I've enjoyed watching it, but every time I'm like, this can't have been good. Okay, there's straight up like date rape in it, and then there's like, but it's like slut shaming date rape, where it's like she deserved it because she's a slut, and then there's just like a super racist Asian character named Long Duck Dawn, and it's bad, but the whole time you're like, I think that this was also bad then, but nobody cared. Like it's like I can't imagine this was okay then.
Like there's like an entire like sequence towards the end where the woman who was like really pining for there's a woman who's pining for John Travolta throughout and wants to get in his pants, and he lets all of his friends rape, like just like like gang rape her, and I'm like, please, can this stop? And then he's like letting it happen because he's like, this is like, yo, you wanted me, but I'm not gonna let you have me. Like, here's all my friends, and I'm like, man, fuck this movie, dude. Fuck this character. But hey, we're supposed to root for him because he's John Travolta. He can dance.
Oh boy. Well, I'm glad that we're ushering in a new era. Hopefully we won't go back to that. But Rendy, where can people find you, follow you, keep up with your latest projects?
So my website is Rendy Reviews, RENDY Reviews. So everybody will get that E wrong. You can follow me on Twitter, Rendy_Jones. You can also find me on Instagram at Rendy Jones. No underscores. I think that's about it. I'm just graduating in a month, and after in around a month's time, I will have a cool new announcement and different projects to unveil. Hopefully, if everything pans out well, this April.
Congratulations. Yeah, definitely follow Rendy, read the reviews, especially if you need help getting through all the award season movies. There's so many great reviews there. You can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod and follow me at Larissa T. Oh, actually, I just changed follow me at Larissa T on Twitter, but I just changed my Instagram to Teresa Lee Bot. Okay, so follow me there.
Ooh,
bye.
Nice.